Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud Ches, Daf 18 of Masechta Megilla. Today's Daf, we're gonna wrap up our discussion yesterday about davening, and then we're gonna discuss some halachos of writing Megillah, reading Megillah, things like that. So, alright, well, friends, let's go weiter. 1 second, I'm hearing some noise. 1 second. Oh, not hearing it anymore. I wonder what that was. Well, let's move on. Alright, so what was that? What in the world? Oh, it sounds like some kind of... it sounds like somebody's doing something. They're probably doing it just to bother me. Let's go weiter. Alright, so we're on the Daf Yud Ches, about 4 or 5 lines before it gets wide. It's kind of in the middle, because it was like, basically if we didn't stop where we stopped, we'd have to do half of today's Amud, which I didn't really want to do. So, anyways, it says Mikan ve'elach. You see where I am? It's about 1, 2, 3, 4 lines before it gets really wide. And it says Mikan ve'elach. Also, the Sabbath B'Shvacha Shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? So yesterday, at the end of the daf, we were discussing, kind of the canon. I don't know if that's the right word, but kind of all the brachas in the Shemona Esrei. And now we're saying, Mikan ve'elach, other than these brachas that are in the Shemona Esrei, also the Sabbath B'Shvacha Shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, we can't just make up other blessings. Meaning we can pray the Eibishter all we want, Baruch Hashem, but we don't kind of establish more brachas, like official brachas in the Shemona Esrei as such. Damar Belazar Ma'dichsiv, because says Belazar, what does the pasuk mean? Mi'mal gvuras Hashem yashmir kol tila. So who's going to praise, going to speak of the might of God? Yashmir kol tila. So make it be heard, all of his prayers. L'minoy l'mal gvuras Hashem. Who is he that is befitting to praise God? The Mishiyachol Ashmir Kol Tila. So somebody who could say all of his praises. Now, obviously, nobody could say all of the praises of God, and therefore, Memele, nobody's really in a position to be creating new kind of official brachas. And therefore, so we have the Shemona Esrei. Other than that, we don't tamper. A fellow speaks of the praise of the Eibishter too much. Nekar min ha'olam. Ho ho ho. He's going to be uprooted from the world. Oy vavoy. Alright. Well, Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Hayisuper lo ki adaber imamr ish ki yivalea? What's that word? Ki yivula. Alright? What do you want me to tell you? So the drush is a super low ki adaber, that if you speak too much, yamamar ish ki yivula, you're going to get swallowed up. Alright? So I think you could praise the Eibishter all you want. You could always pray to the Eibishter. Right? L'vayshi spal adam kol yom kulo. A fellow can always pray, but he shouldn't make up official brachas for the Shemona Esrei. Darsha Yehuda ish kvar giburya, ve'amila ish kvar gibur chayil. Alright, fine. So Rabbi Yehuda from the village of Giboria, some taka say gibur chayil. We have a friend here at Babylon Talmud, right? That his father's name is Ish Chayil, right? Shmuel Yosef ben Ish Chayil, I believe. Anyways, Ma'idich Siv, what does the pasuk mean? L'chadum yosihila. What does it mean that for you, God, silence is prayer? Samedchuli mashtoka. That the best thing that there is silence. All right. Kiyos Ravdimi Omar, when Ravdimi came to Babel from Eretz Yisrael, he said, "Amid b'ma'arava," they say in Eretz Yisrael, "Mila b'sela mashtoka b'trein." That if the value of a word is 1 coin, the value of silence is 2 coins. All right. Well, friends, I think maybe then we should wrap up this episode right here, and I'm just going to keep quiet. Let's go weiter. Kral peh lo yotza. If a fellow reads the Megillah by heart, he's not yotza. I mentioned the other day, I could read parts of the Megillah by heart. But if I did that, then we would not fulfill our obligation. Friends, y'all gonna come to Jerusalem and we'll read the Megillah together? Who's gonna dress up as the donkey of Rabbi Yossi de Menyukras? Stay away from me. Yeah. Let's go weiter. Minalan. So how do we know that you're not allowed to read the Megillah by heart? So Amar Rabbi says, Rabbi, Asi Zechira. Well, because we have a Gzeir Shava of Zechira, that it says, right, Lizkor, to remember by Megillah as well as by Amalek. Okay, so it says in the Megillah that these days are mentioned. It says by Amalek, Sovzos Zikaron Basefer. Write it down as a remembrance in the book. Malahalim Basefer, Afkan Basefer. Just like by Amalek says Sovzos Zikaron Basefer, right, as a remembrance in a book. So therefore, also here by Megillah, it dafka has to be in a book that you have to read it from the scroll. You can't read it by heart. How do I know that when it says to remember, it actually means to read? Maybe it just means to study it, to analyze the Megillah. Lo sakadaitich. No way, no how. Tichsiv, because the pasuk says, or the Tanya, as we learned in the Brisa, Zachar, remember, Yochel Balev. Is it possible that when it says to remember, it means just like internally? Kshu Omer Lo Sishkach. When it says don't forget it, well, when the pasuk says don't forget, that means don't forget sort of internally, right from your heart. So then what does it mean to remember it? Bepeh, verbally, to actually read the Megillah from a cloth. Alright. If a fellow reads the Megillah in Aramaic, so in a translation, so he's not, doesn't fulfill his obligation, how exactly is this fellow reading in Aramaic? If you're going to tell me that it's talking about that it's written in Hebrew, but he's reading it in Aramaic, instead of reading, he's just kind of scanning it with his eyes in Hebrew and then translating it into Aramaic as he goes. Hanu al peh. But then that's basically reading by heart. He's not reading the text, he's just basically reading it by heart. So the tzricha, dechsiva targum v'kar the targum. No, it's talking about where it's written in Aramaic and he's reading it as Aramaic. So in that case, we're saying that it does not work. Can't read the Megillah if in Aramaic. It's written in Aramaic, he's reading it in Aramaic, it doesn't work. But to sort of non-Hebrew speakers, you can read it in other languages. So one second, didn't we just say that if you read it in any language, it doesn't work? We just said if you read it in Aramaic, it doesn't work. B'cholashon, it doesn't work. In any language, it doesn't work. And now we're saying that you can read it to English speakers in English. So Avishmuel Damar Tavayu. So Avishmuel say Bilaz Yivani. When it says Bilaz, that you're allowed to read the Megillah in another language, it means in Greek. Alright, you can read it in Greek. What do you want me to tell you? Hey Chidami, what do you mean by this? Well, if it's talking about that the Megillah is written in Hebrew, but he's just, as he's reading it, he's translating it into Greek, Hanu al peh. Well, then that would be reading by heart. And we know you're not allowed to read by heart already. Omer Rabacha, Omer Belazar, Sheksuva Belaz Yavonis. It's talking about where it is written in Greek. And we're saying that would be acceptable. From Rabacha, Omer Belazar, says Rabacha, the name of Belazar, Minan Shekro, Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Yaakov El. How do you know that God called Jacob El? Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Vayikra lo El, Eloke Yisrael. That he called him El. Who called him El? God. Because if it enters your mind to say that Vayikra lo Kel Eloke Yisrael means that Jacob called the altar God of Israel, Vayikra lo Yaakov miboiled, and it should say that Jacob called the Mizbech, but it doesn't say that. It says Vayikra lo El Eloke Yisrael, El Vayikra lo Yaakov El Umikra El Eloke Yisrael, that he called Jacob El, and who called Jacob El? Elokei Israel, God. Alright, fine. So what just happened? So Rav and Shmuel said that when it says in the Mishnah that you're allowed to read to non-native Hebrew speakers, you can read the Megillah to them in their in whatever language it is. So that's talking about Greek. You can read the Megillah to Greek speakers in Greek. But Meisve, we have a kasha on that. Giftis ivris ilmis madoyis yivonis lo yotza. That if a fellow reads the Megillah in Giftis or Ivris or Ilmis or Madoyis or Yevonis or Greek, Lo Yotza, Itaka does not work. Itaka does not work. So Rav and Shmuel are saying that you're allowed to read it to Greek speakers in Greek. Yeah, we have a brayso that says that if you read the Megillah in Greek, Itaka does not work. Halodami elalah. So the Gemara says no. The Mishnah is assuming like the following brayso: Giftis legiftim, Ivris leivrim, Ilmis leilmim, Yevonis leyevonim. That you're allowed to read the Megillah in Giftis for gifty people, for gifted people. You're allowed to read the Megillah in Ivris for Ivri people. You're allowed to read the Megillah in Ilmis for Ilmi people. And you're allowed to read the Megillah in Yevonis for Yevoni people, for Greek people. So Yotza, so that works. So you're allowed to read, you're allowed to read the Megillah in English to English speakers. If that's the case, well then, how come Rav and Shmuel are specifically saying that our Mishnah that says that you're allowed to read Lilo Azos Belaz to foreign language speakers in their foreign language? So Rav and Shmuel say it's talking about Greek, but it seems to be not just Greek, it's also the gifted people and the Ivrim and the Ilmim. So Lukman B'cholaz, mention any non-Hebrew language. Elamasnisin Kibraisa, rather our Mishnah is in fact like the Brisa, which means that you can read to English speakers in English, to French speakers in French, etc. That when Rav and Shmuel say that you're allowed to read the Megillah in Greek, it's like an umbrella kind of language. Anybody can hear the Megillah in Greek. Rav Shmuel Damar Tavayu, the Rav and Shmuel both say Laz Yevoni Lakol Kosher, that Greek can be, you can read the Megillah in Greek for anybody. V'akatani Yevonis liYevonim. But one second, didn't we say in the Brisa that you're allowed to read Greek to the Greek people, right? We said you're allowed to read in Giftis for the gifted people. You're allowed to read in Ivris for the Ivri people. We said you're allowed to read in Greek for the Greek people. Livanim in Luchuli Amalo, implying that you can read to Greek people in Greek, but not to anybody else. So how come Rav and Shmuel would be saying that anybody can hear the Megillah in Greek? So Inu the Amr Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. Well, Rav and Shmuel are saying like Rab Shimon ben Gamliel that we learned the other day. That's not. We learned in the Mishnah. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Omer says Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Af Sfarim Lo Yitiru Sheikasvu Eli Yevonis, that by Sifrei Torah, the only acceptable non-Hebrew language that you can write a Torah scroll in would be Greek. The Yevonim. Wait, where am I? Eli Yevonis. V'limdu alacha Rab Shimon v'leimru alacha Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. So why don't Rav and Shmuel simply say that the halacha is like Rab Shimon ben Gamliel? How come they have to say, as if they're like giving their own, right, pshat, which is that you're allowed to read the Megillah in Greek? Just say that the halacha is like Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, that you're allowed to read, Sifrei Torah and now the Megillah in Greek. So Amri halacha Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, if they would just say that the halacha is like Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, Havamina, I might think Hanamile Shar Svarim. I might think that by Sifrei Torah or by Shar Svarim, by other books of the Torah, right, like Nevi'im, Ksuvim, you're allowed to write that in Greek. But by the Megillah, it specifically says Kichsovim, that you have to, that it's recorded as it's written. So I might think, what does it mean as it's written? I might think it has to be written in Hebrew. It can't be written in Greek. So I might think that if Rav and Shmuel simply said the halacha is like Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, I might think that the halacha is like Rab Shimon ben Gamliel by other things. But by the Megillah, since it says Kichsovim as it's written, I might think it has to be in Hebrew. So Kamashmon, Rav and Shmuel are saying that the halacha is like Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, even the Megillah, Rav and Shmuel are saying that you're allowed to read the Megillah in Greek, that even the Megillah where it says Kichsovim, that can nonetheless still be written in Greek and read in Greek. Continues the Mishnah, V'aloi sheshama ashuris yotza. If a fellow is not a Hebrew speaker, but nonetheless hears the Megillah in Ashuris, in Hebrew, he's nonetheless fulfills his obligation. V'alo yodamai ka'amr. In fact, the Gemara, how could a fellow fulfill his obligation in Hebrew if he doesn't speak Hebrew? He doesn't know what they're talking about. So, mididahava anoshim ba'me'aretz, well, women and people who, I guess, were not particularly learned, so they would be able to listen to the Megillah in Hebrew. So then Ravina says, I mean, we also don't know what certain things, it says not just those people. I mean, lots of people don't understand every single word in the Megillah, right? Friends, who could tell me what means? Ich weiß nicht. So ele mitzvahs kriya for sume nisa. Rather, the point is that the mitzvah is to read the Megillah, and it's also for sume nisa, which means that, even if you don't necessarily understand the word, but you can ask somebody, hey, friend, what does this mean? And you're talking about the Megillah, and there's like, publicizing of the miracle. So also by the Megillah, it's a mitzvah of to read it and to publicize the miracle, and that can be done in Hebrew. All right, let me tell you. So if you read the Megillah with like spaces, with like gaps, you read a shtickle, you wait a shtickle, you read a shtickle, you wait a shtickle. The rabbis didn't know exactly what seirugin meant. But then these rabbis who were students of Rebbe heard the maidservant in the house of Rebbe saying to the rabbis that they were coming in like spurts. Some of them would enter, then they would take a break, then others would enter, then they would stop, and then others would enter. And what do you think she said? Why are you coming in spurts? So then they realized, now we understand what this means. It means that you can't read the Megillah in spurts, right? No, you tackle Aryotze, right? Yeah. If you're allowed to read the Megillah in spurts. All right. The rabbis didn't know what are chaloglogos. But then they heard the maidservant of the house of Rebbe who was saying to a certain fellow that he was what was he? He was like spreading out like purslane. Friends, what's purslane? Why are you what are you doing? Why are you scattering your chaloglos? So they figured, okay, chaloglos are chaloglogos. Those are purslane. The rabbis didn't know what does the pasuk mean. Salsaleh usomemeka. Shamur la'amsa de Rebbe. They're the maidservants, the maidservant of the house of Rebbe, the Avos. Amro la'ugava, that she said to a certain fellow that he was playing with his hair. Amro, she said to the fellow, how long are you going to be twirling around and playing with your hair for? So he figured, all right, I guess that's what it means to play around with the words of the Torah, and it will lift you up. The rabbis didn't know, what does it mean? Throw on the Eibishter your load. Says one time I was traveling with a certain Arab fellow, certain Arab merchant, and I was carrying a load. And the fellow said to me, take your load and put it on my camel. And they figured out, okay, Yohavcha means your load. The rabbis didn't know, what does it mean that I'm going to sweep you with a broom of destruction? Friends, sounds like something you want to stay away from. A broom of destruction. I stay away from all brooms, Lamaisa. Shema'ul amsad v'Rebbe dahavas amr l'chaverta shakli teitisa v'taite beisa. But then they heard the maidservant of the house of Rebbe who was saying to her friend, hey, go chop what would we say? A broom. Go chop a broom and sweep. So then they realize, oh, okay, I guess v'taitei siyah, but my taitei ate hashmid means I'm going to sweep you up with a broom of destruction. Okay. Turn Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. Karas Seirugin Yotza. Fellow reads the Megillah in spurts. No problem. He's Yotze. Seirusin lo Yotza. But if he reads it out of order, that's a problem. Reb Mona Omer, Uwa, says Reb Mona, Mishum Reb Yehuda, Uwa, in the name of Reb Yehuda. Seirugin, even when we talk about spurts, Imshal K'dei Ligmar es Kula Chozer Rosh. Uwa. So it says Reb Mona, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, that when we say that you're allowed to read the Megillah in spurts, there's a limit to how much time, how much space there could be between each spurt, right? You read some of the Megillah and then you wait. So if you wait long enough that you could have finished it, and the Gemara is going to explain in a minute what that means exactly, then you have to start over. So you can't wait, forever. Amar Rav Yosef Alacha Rav Mona Shomer Mishum Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yosef that Alacha is takalek Rav Mona, who says in the name of Rav Yehuda. Excuse me. Amalei Abai. So Abai says to Rav Yosef, K'tei Ligmar es kula mehecha dekay l'seifa, or dilma mereisha l'seifa. So fact Abai to Rav Yosef, he says, so Rav Yosef, when Rav Mona says the name of Rav Yehuda, and you say that the Alacha is like him, so when we say that if you take a break for enough time to finish it from where? Right? Mehecha dekay l'seifa, is it talking about from where he is now until the end? So if he's halfway through the Megillah and then he takes a break, so if it's the amount of time that it would take to read the second half of the Megillah, then he has to read from the beginning. Or maybe it means from the beginning to the end. Even if he's halfway through the Megillah, if he waits long enough before he continues, that he could have theoretically read the entire Megillah from the beginning until the end, then he has to start over. So if Yosef answers Abai, and he says that it means from the beginning until the end. That no matter where he is, at the beginning, a quarter, halfway, 3/4, almost at the end, whatever it is, when he takes a break, if he waits long enough that he could have read the entire Megillah from the beginning until the end, so then he has to start over. Because if Abai, we would say that it's based on where you are presently until the end, well then that's much more subjective, because if I'm at the beginning, then I have more time. If I'm at the end, I have less time. So therefore, it's always going to be the amount of time to read the Megillah from the beginning until the end. Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Rav Uwa, says Rav Abba, in the name of Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, in the name of Rab, halacha Rav Mona, that the halacha is taka like Rav Mona, that if you wait enough time to finish the entire Megillah, so you have to start over. Ushmuel Amar ein halacha Rav Mona Uwa, Shmuel says that the halacha taka is not like Rav Mona. Alright, what do I mean to tell you? B'sur masnuachi. So this is how they taught it in Surah. B'pumpedisa masnuachi. In Pumpedisa, they teach the machlokas in the following way. Omer of Kahana, Omer Rav. Okay, so it says of Kahana in the name of Rav, instead of Rav Abba in the name of Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba in the name of Rav. So it says of Kahana in the name of Rav. Halacha Rav Mona, that the halacha is taka like Rav Mona. Ushmuel Omer ein halacha Rav Mona. And Shmuel says that the halacha is not like Rav Mona. Alright. Rav Bevai Masni Ipcha, Rav Bevai Taka teaches it the opposite. Rav Amar Ein Halacha Rav Mona, Shmuel Amar Halacha Rav Mona. Rav says the halacha is not like Rav Mona. Shmuel says the halacha is like Rav Mona, that if you wait long enough to finish the entire thing, you gotta go back to the beginning. Amar Rav Yosef Nekot Rav Bevai Biodcha, and Rav Yosef says that Taka, what Rav Bevai says makes sense. The Shmuel hu the Chayish Lichida, because over here, right, according to Rav Bevai, Shmuel is being more strict, right? He's saying that if you wait long enough that you could have read the entire thing, you have to start over, as opposed to what the rabbis who argue on Rav Mona are saying is that even if you wait long enough to read the entire Megillah, you don't have to go back. You can you pick up where you left off. So Rav Mona is being more stringent and saying that if you wait enough time to have read the entire Megillah, then you have to start from the beginning. So says Rav Yosef that it makes sense to say like Rav Bevai says, that Shmuel is saying that the halacha is like Rav Mona, i.e. Shmuel is being more stringent because the chayish liyichida, because Shmuel he's concerned about individual opinions when they are being stringent, right? So generally, of course, we say Yochid Rabim Halacha Karabim, that when you have an individual opinion and a consensus opinion, we hold like the opinion of the consensus. However, says Shmuel, if the individual opinion is being stringent, so then we will hold like the stringent individual opinion, which in this case is Reb Mona. The Tanan is v'takalun in the Mishnah Shomeres Yavam Shekidesh Achives Achosa Mishum Rabbi ben Beseira Amru Lo Hamtin At Sheyaisa Achicha Godol Maise Amashma Alacha Rabbi ben Beseira. Friends, Yibum. Who's excited for Yevamis? Friends, it's coming up pretty soon. I mean, we're almost done over here with Masechta Megilla. We got less than 2 weeks in Masechta Megilla. We got Moed Katan, which is not very long. It's another 4 weeks. And then you got Chagiga, also not particularly long. And then Yevamis. Friends, here we go. What's this talking about? What's Yibum? So, if you have Ruvain. Ruvain is married to Rachel, and Ruvain dies, and they don't have any children. So then, Ruvain's got 2 brothers, Shimon and Levi. Shimon, of course, is older, Levi is younger. Now, Rachel has a sister Leah. Okay, fine. Sounds like a lot of fun. Now, now, Rachel, who's the widow, she needs to marry Ruvain's brothers. Now, really, the mitzvah is that she should marry Shimon, the older brother. But what's the chiddush about Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira is that he views it as though both Shimon and Levi both have some kind of a connection to Rachel until somebody makes a move, right? So therefore, if Levi, the younger brother, betroths Leah, Rachel's sister, so we say, hey, Levi, stop what you're doing, don't, right? Of course, there's 2 parts of marriage. There's Kiddushin and Nisuin, right? So if he already betroths her with Kiddushin, we say, Levi, wait, don't actually marry, don't do Nisuin, don't marry Leah. Wait until your older brother Shimon either does Yibum with Rachel or does Chalitza with Rachel, but he views it as though, because obviously a fellow can't be married to 2 sisters at the same time, right? So therefore we say, hey, Levi, we view it as if, until we figure out what the deal is with Rachel, you still have some kind of a connection with Rachel, because even though ideally Shimon would do Yibum with Rachel, still both Shimon and Levi have some kind of a connection with Rachel, and therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, we say, Shimon, hold off on actually marrying Leah until, Levi, hold off with marrying Leah until your older brother, Shimon, figures out what to do, either Yibum or Chalitza with Rachel. Holy shnikes, friends, this isn't even that hard, and already it's a brain twister. Friends, Yevamis is like 130 pages. Alright, well, we just did about 3 lines of Yevamis. That wasn't bad. Yevamis, they say it's one of the 3 hardest Masechtas. Let's go weiter. I guess it's also the longest of the hard ones. Friends, let's go weiter. So again, so let's read it again. So the Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Shomeres Yavam. So you have Rachel, who was married to Reuven. Reuven passed away. They don't have children. Now there's a whole Yibum situation. Shekidesh Achi v'Sachosa. Now Levi betrothed Rachel's sister Leah. Mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Amru. They said the name of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Omrim lo. We say to Levi, Hamten, hold off, wait. Don't marry Leah. Achiyaisa achicha gadol maise, until your older brother Shimon makes a move, either Chalitza or Yibum. And then once he does that, so then you're free to marry Leah. But until then, don't do anything. Amr Shmuel, Alacha Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. And Shmuel says that the Alacha is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, because even though the Chachamim argue and say, no, it's not that both Shimon and Levi are connected to Rachel, because only one of them could actually do Yibum with her. So therefore, the rabbis would say that Levi could just marry Leah, no problem. But Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira is more stringent and says, no, Levi, just hold off until you figure out what's the deal with Shimon and Rachel. And therefore we see that Shmuel is concerned about an individual opinion when it is sort of more stringent, and therefore it makes sense, like Rabbi Beva is saying, that it's Shmuel who's saying that we have to be concerned for a Mona. Friends, let's go weiter. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hishmit basofer osius o psukin, if the scribe skipped some letters, he missed some letters, or psukin, or verses. Friends, my chaver Pesach Rothberg, he wrote my Megillah. It's a collector's item because he doesn't write Megillahs anymore. Yeah, you could see it if you're watching the video. That's my Megillah right there, but it's cut off a shtickle. Anyways, yeah, last year I was in Chutz La'aretz, so I didn't have it with me, but the plan this year is to be in Eretz Yisrael, so I'll have the Megillah once again. Anyways, yeah, so Pesach Rothberg, he wrote my Megillah. He's a very holy Yid, and Baruch Hashem, he didn't forget any letters or verses. So Tana Rabbanan Hishmit, but Sofer Osius or Psukin, if the scribe left out some letters or some verses, Vikaran Akore, and the fellow who's reading it, so he read those, he just kind of filled them in on his own, like he just read them even though they weren't there because the scribe skipped them. Right? As though he's kind of like a translator who's translating, so he fulfills his obligation, that's okay. We have a kasha. But one second, we have a brayso that says that if there were letters in the Megillah that were rubbed out or they were torn, in Mishuma Nikr Kshera, well, if you could sort of distinguish them, so then that's okay. If you can't, if they're indistinguishable, so then psula, then it doesn't work. So how, if we're saying that even if the letters are there, but they're sort of just indistinguishable, it doesn't work. Certainly if they're not there at all, it should be a problem. So kasha b'chula b'miksasa, it depends. If it's entirely sort of smudged out and indistinguishable, so then it's a problem. But if it's only partial, right, so then it would be okay. And we're saying here that even if you're like missing a few letters or words, it would be acceptable. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hishmit ba'akore pasuk echod, if the fellow reading the Megillah skipped a verse, lo yomar, he shouldn't say, okay, fine, ekra es kula, v'chakach es ekra also pasuk. He shouldn't say, okay, I'm not going to go back now, let me just finish reading the Megillah and then I'll go back and read that verse at the end. No, he should not say that. Elakore me also pasuk ve'elach, he should go back to the verse that he skipped and read that verse and continue from there. If a fellow walks into the synagogue and it turns out that they're already halfway through the Megillah, so lo yomar, you should not say ekra chetzia matziba v'achakach ekra chetzia. So you should not say, okay, well, let me just at least chaparain the half that I'm experiencing right now, and then I'll go back and read the first half afterwards. No, elakori also mitchila also v'ad sofa. He's got to read it from the beginning until the end. Alright, it sounds very nice. Misnamnim yotzo, if a fellow is dozing off, then he fulfills his obligation nonetheless. Hechidami misnamnim, what does it mean if dozing off? Amaravashi nim velo nim, tir velo tir, dekar le v'oni, velo yoda l'adur isvara, v'chimad kru le midkar. Let's read that again. Tir velo tir, no, nim velo nim. So he's kind of falling asleep, but also not falling asleep. Tir velo tir, he's kind of awake, but also kind of not awake. Dekar le v'oni, you call out to him and he'll reply, but he wouldn't be able to tell you anything complicated. If you remind him of that, he'll be able to remember. Alright, what do you want me to tell you? That's what it means if a fellow is dozing off. But ideally, the fellow reading the Megillah won't be dozing off. Alright, let's go weiter. So the Mishnah says that if a fellow was writing a Megillah, or if he was expounding the Megillah, or checking a Megillah, if he has intention, so then he is Yotzei. I've got to be careful with my words, because we had a whole Gemara in Rosh Hashanah about what exactly it means to have kavanah. Is it kavanah to be Yotzei the mitzvah? Is it kavanah just to read? So I'm going to be careful with my words and just translate literally, which is if he has intention, so then he fulfills his obligation. Hey Chidami. So what exactly, how exactly is he writing this Megillah? If he's first by heart saying each verse, and then after he reviews each verse by heart, he then writes it down. Who cares if he has intention? but he's reading the Megillah by heart, right? If we're saying that, he's reading it as he's writing it, and we're saying that he's saying the verses by heart before he then writes it down, well, then he's basically reading the Megillah by heart, which we said is a problem. So rather it's talking about where he reads each individual verse. Where he writes each individual verse and then reads the verse that he just wrote. But still, even if he has intention, would he fulfill his obligation? So it says, Reb Chelbo, in the name of Reb Chama Bar Gurya, in the name of Rab, that the halacha is that, like the opinion, which is Reb Meir's opinion, that you must read the entire Megillah. And even according to the opinion, which I believe is Reb Yehuda's opinion, that you only need to, technically speaking, you just need to read the Megillah from Ish Yehudi Haya B'Shushan Abira. So tzricha shetei ksuva kula. Nonetheless, the entire Megillah would have to be written, even if you only technically have to read from Ish Yehudi. Nonetheless, the entire Megillah would have to be written, and therefore, how could it be that we're saying that this scribe can write down one verse and then read that verse and then write down the next verse and then read that verse and be yotze that way? But I thought the entire scroll would have to be written. Rather, it's talking about where there is, he's writing a Megillah, but at the same time he has another Megillah next to him that he's using sort of as, as the source, and he reads one pasuk in the Megillah and then he writes it down in the new Megillah. So we're saying that in that case, if he has intention, so then he fulfills his obligation of reading the Megillah. So, fine. So again, the mancho Megillah kame, that there's another Megillah in front of him, a complete Megillah in front of him. V'karei mina psuka psuka, and he's reading one verse at a time from the complete Megillah. V'chasav la, and then he's writing it down in the Megillah that he is writing. And therefore, if he has intention when he's reading from the sort of source Megillah, so then he fulfills his obligation. So lema misa yeya le Rav Bar Bar Chana. So let's say that this supports Rav Bar Bar Chana. How come? To Rav Bar Bar Chana, Rabbi Yochanan, because Rav Bar Bar Chana says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Also lichtov os achas shalom min aksav. It says Rav Bar Bar Chana, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that you're not allowed to write down even one letter if you don't have sort of like a source text next to you. So Dilma Disramile Samuye. So the Gemara suggests, well, maybe the Mishnah is not saying that you have to have sort of a source text next to you that you're using to as sort of a source for the text that you're going to be writing into the new Megillah. No, maybe, right, so don't necessarily assume that what the Mishnah is saying is that you have to have this source text next to you. Rather, in the event that you did have your source text next to you, so if, while you're reading from the source text, before writing it in the new text, so if you had intention, so then you're yotze. But it's not necessarily saying, like Rabbi Bar Bar Chana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that you have to have that source text. Gufa, we said earlier, Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, Rabbi Yochanan, also lichtov os achas shalom min aksav. Says Rabbi Bar Bar Chana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that you're not allowed to write down even one letter in like a Sefer Torah, I guess, if you don't have a source text next to you. Meisvim, we have a kasha, Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Maisib Reb Meir shalach la'abrishana ba'asya. There was a story with Reb Meir that he went to make a leap year in a place called Asya. V'lohaya sham Megillah, and Darton in Asya there was no Megillah. V'chas v'meliba. So what did Reb Meir do? He wrote a Megillah on his own. He just by heart. He knew the text and he wrote it on his own. Vikara, and he read from it. So what do we see? So we see that Reb Meir Taka wrote a Megillah. Al pet. Reb Meir Taka wrote a Megillah without a source text. So how come Rabbi Bar Bar Chana says that you need to have a source text? So Rabbi Bo Shani Reb Meir D'Mekayim Bey. So Rabbi Bo says, well, Reb Meir is unique because about him there's this verse that your eyelids, I guess, will be straight in front of you. That he understood he knew the Torah really, really well. Therefore, he kind of knew the Megillah by heart, and he could sort of write a Megillah based on his memory. But he was kind of an exception to the rule. Says Rabbi Bar Chama to Rabbi Yirmiyah, Midifti, What does it mean that your eyelids will be straight before you? Amrlo. So he said to him, Torah. These are the words of Torah, that it says about the that you, if you take your eyes away from it for a second, so then you're going to forget it. So and even so, they are straight before Reb Meir, that he kind of knew them very well, very clearly, and therefore he was able to write a Megillah based on his own sort of memory. But in general, it would not be allowed, according to Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Chizda Ashkel Rav Chananel Tavakosov Svarim Shlom and Aksav. Rav Chizda found Rav Chananel, and Rav Chananel was writing Sifrei Torah by heart. And Rav Chizda says, look, Rav Chananel, while technically speaking, yes, the entire Torah you would be able to write sort of by heart, because you know it so well. But nonetheless, the rabbi said, nonetheless, you are not allowed to write even one letter, shalom and aksav, without a source text. Now, interestingly, from the fact that Rav Chananel says, from the fact that Rav Chizda says to Rav Chananel that technically speaking, the entire Torah could be written, by heart from you, because you know it so well. So Mechladim Yusharin in Etzlo, which means that they were very clear to him, just like by Reb Meir. And nonetheless, Rav Chizda was still saying that you need to use a source text for Reb Meir Kosav. But why would Rav Chizda say that he needs to use a source text if, after all, Reb Meir was also very clear? It was very clear to him the words of the Torah, and he was allowed to write a Megillah. So Shas Adchak Shaini. So the Gemara says, well, in Reb Meir's case, it was an emergency situation. That's why he was allowed to write it by heart. But sort of in general, even if you know the text really well, you should use a source text. Okay, fine. So Shas Adchak Shaini. So a difficult situation, an extreme situation is different. Abaye shara le dvei barchabu the michtav tefillin mezuzah shalom and achsav. Okay, so Abaye permitted to the Bei Bar Chabu. They were like a sofa shop. They would make tefillin mezuzahs things. So Abaye allowed them to write tefillin mezuzahs without requiring a source text. Shalom and Aksav, without a source text. Kiman. So Kiatana, it's like the following Bryce Tana. The Tana is within a Bryce. Rabbi Yirmiyah Omer says, Rabbi Yirmiyah Mishum Rabbeinu, in the name of Rabbeinu. Tefillin and mezuzahs nichtava shalom and Aksav, that you're allowed to write tefillin and mezuzahs without a source text. Bein tzrichen sirtut, and you also don't need to etch lines into the cloth. V'ilchsa, and the halacha is tefillin ein tzrichen sirtut, that tefillin do not require sort of drawing, like etching lines into the cloth, into the parchment. Mezuzahs tzrichen sirtut, but mezuzahs do require those lines. Idi v'idi nichtava shalom and Aksav. Both tefillin and mezuzahs are allowed to be written without a source text. My taima migar is greasing, because they're very familiar. Everybody knows sort of the text is basically like Kriya Shema and stuff. So therefore you can read that without a source text. Friends, that was Daf Yud Ches of Masechta Megillah. I hope you enjoyed it. At the beginning we kind of wrapped up our discussion from yesterday about sort of the canon of the Shmona Esrei, and how we don't add things onto the canon. We then discussed reading the Megillah in different languages, right? Sort of anybody, you can read the Megillah in Hebrew, and that's sort of acceptable globally. But then interestingly, we said that, for English speakers, you could read the Megillah in English. And for, French speakers, you could read the Megillah in French, or whatever it is. So that was very interesting. We discussed what happens if you miss part of the Megillah. That's actually a very halach l'maisa halach, right? So what if the fellow who's reading the Megillah misses a pasuk or something? So he said you go back to the pasuk that you skipped and you read from there. Don't just get back to it at the end. And also, if you get to shul and they're halfway through, don't just listen to that half and then go back to the beginning at the end. Rather, what you want to do is you want to read the Megillah from the beginning until the end, and hear the whole thing. We saw the opinion of Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that when a scribe is writing a Sefer Torah, he should write it with a source text next to him. And we said that if, when you're writing a Megillah, if you have the source text next to you, and as you're reading from the source text and then writing into the new Megillah, you're having intention, I guess for, at least in some capacity or another, for Mikra Megillah, so then you are Yotze. We said at the end that when it comes to Tefillin and Mezuzahs, you don't need to have a source text because the text itself is very, very familiar already. Friends, that was Daf Yudches of Masechet Megillah. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.